You know it's that time of year where I disappear again for a couple of weeks. So we got this bulk recording coming up, and I thought a really fun thing to do would be to give y'all my personal viability rankings thread, not for current gen, no, Gen 3 NU. As you all know, this is my favorite tier of all time. You know, the others are like SMNU and Black-White UU. And so I play it a decent amount. I like to build it in my free time, and also I like to talk about it. So I'm gonna give y'all basically the rundown of how to play this tier just through my VR. Of course, some of these things are subject to change on a moment's notice, such as if I'm just feeling a little different on a given day, but I think most of this is roughly how I feel. So that you all know as well, it is an order of viability from the S rank until A-, and then down here just alphabetical, because at this point, frankly, you're just picking between mons that don't really matter that much. Of course, as per usual, do you like daily uploads? Do you like competitive Pokemon? Subscribe if you do and you're not already. And if you are already subscribed, leave a like. Comment down below, what's your favorite tier of Pokemon, period? You know, it can be any gen, any format. It could be an other metagame even. You like almost any ability for Gen 5? You know what? Good for you. Let me know about that down below. Now, we get to start off with a doozy. If you are an ADV NU trooper, you're gonna see that I said this was an order of viability, and you're gonna see that Glalie not number 1. And I've got a good reason for that. Haunter, number 1 in this tier, and I think it's not obvious, but I've got, in my opinion, a good enough argument for it. And truthfully, this is a 1A, 1B type deal, where I feel like really either of these you can put number 1, and it's fine. I don't really talk about that here, but I do kind of allude to the fact that at the end of the day, it's not like the reasoning I have for Glalie being below Haunter is like this absurdly, you know, huge difference. But the idea is basically this. Haunter, in my opinion, goes on literally every team. Other than Stall, which doesn't really see a ton of use in ADV NU, it sees enough to talk about it, but not so much that it's, you know, this abundantly important archetype. Other than Stall, though, there's not a single build I'm not using a Haunter on. I really don't care. This tier is pretty, like, balance / offense heavy, and Haunter goes on both of them. There's very obvious reasons for this as well. One, it's got the highest speed tier in the stat, not named Raticate. You know, we talk about 95 being basically the pinnacle, unless you want to use Rat at base 97. But otherwise, it's things like Haunter and Plusle. And so that's huge. 2, it has Explosion. Basically, any Pokemon with a boom move in this generation is going to be viewed very, very highly. So, I mean, you see as well, all 3 of these mons learn boom moves. You got both Wailord and Torkoal here with boom moves. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of this secret to success. And so that helps carry Haunter. And in 3, a lot of weird defensive utility that you actually can make use of even by EVing for a little bit of bulk. If you look at a lot of people's Haunter sets, unless they're going with like a Salac Berry or a Pataya Berry set, they don't go just, you know, max special attack, max speed in this tier. They actually go for some HP, some special defense, some defense. Like, there are things you could EV for, like Wailord's Hydro Pump to tank 1 from full. You could EV for Hidden Power Ghost from non-choice band Hitmonchan and tank 1 from full. It's not that like, oh yeah, you EV for bulk and oh, you become this incredible wall. No. You just EV to get a little bit more defensive use and actually make it so that you're maximizing this thing's ability to pivot into certain Pokemon. I think that's really, really important. So all of these things put together, yeah, I rate Haunter more highly than Glalie. Once again, I mean, it's a 1A, 1B type deal. And on any other day, maybe I do put Glalie above Haunter and I just say, yeah, I mean, spikes in this tier are incredible. Glalie the best spiker, yada yada. And we'll, you know, expand on that. So Glalie, it's up here for spikes. And kind of like Haunter, this mod's really weird with EVing because you could actually get so much defensively out of it. Now, what I'm about to drop on you, you're going to hear and you might laugh for a moment, but you need to remember the context of this is Gen 3 NU. So the power level's pretty low. Glalie has base 80 for all its stats. Nowadays, that would get you crucified. I mean, it's in, literally look at Glalie nowadays, it's in ZU. I don't even think it's technically below ZU. It's probably below the tier below ZU. But in this tier, 80s everywhere is pretty solid. And so Glalie able to make a lot of use out of that through a myriad of different EV spreads. For example, you can go offensive on Glalie, and with Earthquake, Shadow Ball, Explosion, Spike, that's a really annoying wall breaker to deal with. Even with no stab, and it's not like it really matters, right? What's taking all of ground ghost coverage with the threat of boom? The answer is like, I guess Sableye? And that's pretty much it. Like, Pelipper doesn't want to get explodey woadied on. Go back. I did not say you could go and skip. How dare you? It's like Sableye and nothing else, because Pelipper gets boomed on. Something like Wailord gets boomed on. Torkoal takes too much from EQ when you invest. Mawile, kind of the same deal. Like, Mawile and Relicanth are taking too much from those EQs for you to be truly consistent switch-ins. Coughing is just not bulky enough to really count as a switch-in. Is just a really, really good mod offensively. And then you want to throw in the other set, well, you can go specially defensive on Glalie. Like, bulk on Glalie is really good, because here's the thing. Yes, Mono Ice is a terrible defensive typing, but Stealth Rock doesn't exist in this gen. So it's not nearly as punishing as it would become in the next generation. And even then, Glalie's still pretty good in ADV NU. We've actually seen a lot more of it lately, so maybe we'll have a video on that one day. Not too sure about it, because I feel like 3 people would click on that, but, you know. Especially if it's a Glalie. What does it check? Well, Haunter's one of them. Huge thing right there. Huge interaction. Especially if it's a Glalie, it's one of the better Haunter checks in the tier. You take a pittance from its T-Bolt and Psychic coverage, and then you just hit it with Shadow Ball, and it goes Kersplowy. You check Chime pretty well as well. You can check Blossom really well, even under Sun. Hidden Power Fire does not two-shot, especially if it's a Glalie. It's kind of wild. You check Plusle, kind of. You can check Pikachu even, but it's more like you pivot in on not Thunderbolt, and then it doesn't KO in the next turn. You can check a lot of these water types though as well. Things like Wailord, Huntail, Octillery, and Pelipper, they're all actually kind of checked decently by Spadef Glalie. At a point, yes, the damage that it's taking is a little high, especially if you have spikes up, but it's not a bad pivot at all into them. So, pretty good at containing a large variety of threats. And as we mentioned, and I cannot emphasize this enough, it is the best spiker in the tier. Because keep in mind, all the mods I talked about checking, notice how Cacturne and Roselia, that's a lot of their niche as well when you're talking about them defensively. Cacturne and Rose are supposed to check some of these mons. Like, Cacturne's one of the best Haunter checks in the tier. But Glalie can do it too, while still offering a lot more. Roselia, it can check some of these water types also. But why would I use Rose when Glalie can do it? Now, there are reasons. And again, so why do I technically have Glalie below Haunter? Well, these are still fine spikers. Like, at the end of the day, spikes are so good, it really doesn't matter what you're using. I mean, there are people that'll say Omanite is good because it's a spiker, and physically defensive Omanite can check some Pokemon like Raticate, and I don't know if it checks Vigoroth, maybe it does. But it can check some mons in the tier and set spikes, so like it's viable enough. Not necessarily good, but viable enough. Like, that's what we're kind of talking about when I say, like, yeah, I mean, spikes are so good. I would say the big seller against Glalie for being the best mon is Hitmonchan right here. Chan is, it's not that Glalie can't beat Chan, but a lot of the time you're just forced to boom on it and kind of say, like, okay, we're playing this, you're gonna have no spin, I'm gonna have no spikes, I'm gonna explode on you, and I'm just gonna open up something on my team that really benefits Chan being gone. Roselia, this is actually where Roselia actually has, like, tangible benefit over Glalie. Roselia, if you're on FizzDef Roselia, you actually could beat Chan decently consistently. It's still not, like, amazing. We're talking Spin Chan specifically, so not, like, Banded. But FizzDef Roselia is actually able to spike versus Chan and long-term win the exchange. So that alone, I actually think, mandates that there is a reason to use this mon. You'll notice up here, Super Epic Ampharos, very good player, wonderful person. I agree with the Tropius point. I think the Roselia point is incredibly cope. They may say that this thing is literal garbage. No, you are coping. I'm sorry to say, but I do believe there's at least enough that you could point to say, yeah, no. This is the big thing I disagree with. I do not believe Glalie is the de facto best mon in the tier to the point that you'd S+ it. It's not that good. It is incredible. It's not that good. To where you can't... I would sooner say Haunter is S+. Because I genuinely don't see a reason to not use Haunter. Unless you're trying to point out Stall, in which case... Yeah, fair. Though I don't know if Ubers used Primal Groudon on Stall, so there you go. I don't know if Stall existed in Ubers back when Pidon was running the tier. But all that to say, these are essentially a 1A, 1B. I just personally believe when it comes down to it, this mon has literally no reason to be used outside of a single archetype. There is at least enough reason to consider other options to where I don't think Glalie has to be used on every team. You can almost always justify it. I mean, you can always justify it, essentially. But you still have the other spikers, and they are still viable, no matter what you want to argue. Like, they have use cases. Crackturn, I would argue, the use case comes down to something like having Sleep with Grass Whistle, having moves like Encore, and I think Destiny Bond is in this gen. You can go like Pinchberry sets on Cacturn. I think that, yeah, because I'm pretty sure it has Destiny Bond, because I've seen Salicberry Cacturn a decent amount. I don't know why you would run that without D-Bond. I can even check over here real quick. Yeah, have some teams. Am I right in saying this gets D-Bond this gen? Yeah, so it does. There are a couple use cases for these other mods. And again, like I said, Cacturn still checks Haunter incredibly well. And it still could pivot around some of the water types okay as well. So, I mean, there's at least justification for it. It's just not like, you know, some godlike mod. That's where I stand on it, though. If you have Glalie #1 in the tier, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. It's a fine take. I just personally feel Haunter is, like, so much harder to not put on every team of mine. And then we have Metang and S. And once again, like I said, I mean, boom. Explodey Wody. That's a huge part of it. Metang also just happens to check, again, a ton of the tier. You check Haunter. You technically check Glalie. I mean, it's not amazing when they're EQ with, like, Soft Sand, but you do still check it. You check Chime. You check Bell, just because, again, it's one of those things where HP Fire and Sun is not a one-shot, and you can boom and deny the late-game sweep. You technically check Plusle. It's not a mod I want to use my Metang to check, but I'm wrong if I say that it doesn't get checked. You check the Rat, you can check Vig, but again, it's a little awkward because of bulk up and potentially Q coverage. You check all the flyers, you know, so Golbat, Pidgeot, Murkrow, they're all checked by you. You also basically beat every spiker. I guess we could extend it to, like, again, you have an okay enough Glalie matchup with Meteor Mash. You stunt on Cacturn, you stunt on Roselia. It just, yeah, it's up here mostly for defensive purposes, right? It's very much like in the vein of Haunter Glalie, where if you're building balance or even offense, the two best archetypes of the tier, these three are probably on every team. Unless you're, again, if you're feeling frisky and want to use a different spiker, be my guess. These are basically always on the team. The one time that you're not using Metang basically comes down to if you're using Mawile instead. And Mawile's really only seen on, one, Full Pass, or two, you can pair Mawile up with Pikachu. Flareon is like the mandatory partner there, because Flare also just happens to have pretty good synergy on the Baton Pass sets with Mawile, or not Mawile, Pikachu. Think about, you know, what just Flareon draw in. Okay, well, Pikachu beats all of that. But Mawile is also still a really good partner for that, and it also just helps to get two different methods of entry for your Pikachu. So that's really the only time you'll see Metang dropped on those types of balance or more offensive teams. It's if you want to run Mawile and just give extra BP support. Now we go to S-. We got Flareon at the top. I would say this is the best wall breaker that ADV NU has. I mean, I even wrote a little bit down here. These are your checks here. Bulky Wailord, which I think a lot of people just don't really love. Fizdef Wailord, it's kind of You're really relying on Rest Talk. There's a lot of room you seed. It's just a tough mon to really buy into. Torkoal, which again, I mean, Double Edge will break through eventually. Sudowoodo, which is, I'm pretty high on Sudowoodo. I mean, I have it in A-, instead of, you know, B+ or B. Sudowoodo, though, which Fire Blast can definitely beat down with spikes and doesn't get recovery and doesn't really run lefties either. And in Mag Cargo, would you like to be referenced to where Mag Cargo is? This is actually a rise from where it was, and I rose it on my personal VR literally just because Flareon doesn't run coverage for this. I mean, the coverage moves you on Flareon. Double Edge, if you're looking at like pure breaker, Double Edge, Fire Blast, In Power Electric, or Grass if you want Grass, and in Quick Attack. Toxic is basically your best coverage option for Mag Cargo. I mean, that's it. So it's kind of, I think this goes to show pretty effectively why this mon's incredible. Yeah, Pupitar technically is a check to non-HP Grass. I implore you, look at the calcs of damage Pupitar is taking from Flareon hits, and you'll quickly realize why I did not bring it up. Chan rounds out the top 5. Hitmonchan's utility set, where you just go a Fighting Stab move, HP Ghost, Toxic, and Rapid Spin. It is basically guaranteed to put in work every game. Really, the only matchup that's not amazing is if, again, you're facing physically defensive Roselia, or something like an Arbok, which Arbok with Intimidate's really pretty effective at exploiting that type of Hitmonchan and getting free entry to Wall Break. Otherwise, this mon is going to do something in every game. It is going to offer a lot of utility with Toxicking on potential Sableyes and Pelipper's. If your Mach Punch is your Fight Stab as well, really good just option to vibe check some of the offensive threats of the tier. Mostly looking at like Raticate and Pupitar there, but also Pikachu is another valuable Mach Punch target. So that's pretty swell. You got Chimecho as well at the end of my S-, which is very weird because you got Whale and Chime right next to each other, and I think 3 years ago, we would say these were the 2 best mons in the tier. And now they've kind of fallen off. Chime is still really good though in my view. I think utility-wise is where it shines because Heal Bell is just incredible, especially when you talk about how some of these top mons are super reliant on Toxic to make progress versus their checks. It's nice to have a Cleric. Reflect Chime is also pretty cool because there's a decent amount of physical setup mons that become a lot less scary when a Reflect goes up. Talking mostly about Pupitar in that perspective, but even something like Vigoroth that applies to, something like Rat that applies to, even something like Chan that applies to. Although, of course, Chimecho's winning that exchange, I would say, over 50% of the time. Good check to Haunt, good check, of course, to Chimecho here. Kind of a check to Flareon, but it's a very cope check. Mostly a check from the perspective of you can pivot around Flareon with Chime. It's just not amazing. And then, of course, we talked about a little bit all these other monster checks. It basically can check any physical attacker if you need it to varying degrees of success, of course. And then the Calm Mindset. That is, I still believe, the most dangerous Chimecho. Whether it's offensive Calm Mind or bulky Calm Mind with physical defense invest. I think either works out quite well for Chimecho. Especially with Sableye. Like, I still have it as a top 10 mon, but Sableye is always kind of awkward because it feels like when you build a Sableye team out, it's always got some issues. And even then, I mean, you can run Toxic Calm Mind and just piss Sableye off. So, not the end of the world. Wailord now at the top of A+. We're out of our S ranks. The true mons that I believe are meta-defining. Chime I could see you having at the top of A+ instead. I'm just... Maybe I'm holding on to my youth a little bit with that. But Whale at the top of A+, I think it got worse just because the other water types got better over time. But Whale is still the best in my opinion because it has Boom. And the wall-breaking Wailord sets are like remaining really, really annoying. We've had more Spadef Glalie get usage. Even Spadef Blossom sees a decent amount of usage nowadays. And while there are a lot of other mons too that can pivot around Wailord's moves and potentially bother it, so like Dugong with Encore is a good example of that, where you get in maybe on an Ice Beam or even a Pump. You just Encore it into that, and then it's not doing anything that threatening from there. It still applies a lot of pressure, and it does mandate that you play pretty accurately against it, because it doesn't need a ton of predictions to go in its favor for it to run your team down. I mean, if it Ice Beams the grass type on your team like once, it's pretty quick for that game to go to shit. Which again, why you see so much bulky Glalie, why you see Haunter even run that special defense invest to avoid the pump one-shot. Little things like that that help versus top threats. But Also, I mean, even again, we can talk about the defensive set. Not a huge fan of it, but it does check Flare. And Roar plus Spikes is naturally going to put in a lot of work as well. Good stall mon. Again, still an incredible mon. It's just not like the meta anymore. Torque as well, I got an A+. It's one of the more stable Flareon checks. It can check Glalie, it can check Metang, it can check Channeling. There's a lot of mons you can't check at the top. Good Sunny Beam Blossom check as well, and unlike Flareon, it's a little harder to Diglett trap just because Torque is so obese. Not impossible, just harder. And then as well, again, talk about that physical bulk. Basically, any physical attacker is getting checked. Like, even things like Raticate. What's this mon doing to me? I'm a big old Torkoal, dude. So, very, very strong mon. I think the only awkward part about Torkoal sometimes is the sub-flare. Like, you can see sub pass Flareon just 1v1 certain Torkoal, because just a lot of time it's got for coverage like Fire Blast, Explosion, maybe a hidden power like Electric or Grass, and then Toxic or Yawn is like a last move. And sub Flare will just sub up and say, all right, do something about it. Do something about it. Try and beat me, buddy. So I've run Rock Slide on some Torkoal to make that matchup less bad, but it is a little awkward of a line. And then I have Blossom rounding up my A+. Now I even note right here, I am definitely in a minority of thinking Blossom is this good. But I think Sunny Beam Blossom is kind of easy to support. Like things like Diglett and Offensive Earthquake Glalie. Just very easy teammates, very good enabling of Blossom with those sets. You break down its checks, you trap its checks, and you send it out late game. You say, all right, hello, I'm here. I hope something on your team doesn't get one shot by me, or two shot, or I hope you've slept foddered something useful, because I will sleep powder the remaining checks you have, and you will lose. It's just, I believe, one of the best sweepers in the tier. And it helps too that the specially defensive sets see a good bit more usage now. A good Haunter check, good Chime check even if you want. It checks all of the bulky waters not named Dugong quite consistently. Checks Plusle, checks Pikachu. You know what? This looks actually kind of clean. Let's keep it like this. It's just very nice to have around. Next up, Sableye. Sableye, like I said, it's kind of weird because I feel like every Sableye team just feels weak to something, and I couldn't even explain why. It's just kind of something where if you build the tier, you understand. But big thing Sableye's going for it is the Chan usage being so high. You are one of the better Chan checks of the tier. Where I'd say Sableye struggles and why it's not viewed more highly, because I mean, you look at the top of the tier, I think you could argue that this mon checks like 5 of the higher ranked mons up here. It's that spikes really overwhelm it. So the set that you see a lot of is mixed defensive on Sableye, and you can EV it in a way to tank T-Bolt from Haunter after like 3 layers of spike. The problem is that 3 layers of spike plus T-Bolt from Haunter still pressures the ever-living hell out of you, and basically forces this mon to spend more turns recovering than turns making like progress worth talking about. So it can kind of just turn into a mon that you throw out, you recover with, and then you're immediately forced out the next turn. So it kind of sucks. But I still believe that defensively what it offers to the tier is enough to put it in the top 10 with the acknowledgement of, yeah, you're going to need some extra support from a Hitmonchan just to keep the spikes off the field. But it's really strong. And even have Calm Mindsets that are still like vaguely annoying depending on the team. Not like particularly hard to stop, but they're a good matchup fish. Plusle's next. We talked about Haunter speed tier earlier. Plusle has the same speed tier, which just automatically mandates that it be an annoying mon. You may wonder why it's above Pikachu, when Pikachu is just a far more oppressive offensive threat in terms of damage done. A lot of that comes down to bulk and speed and in tools that it has overall. Pikachu is just a breaker, and although it's a damn good breaker, it's all it offers. Plusle's got things like Sub Pass. It can hold a berry as well, like Pataya Berry, and pass that boost off to something. Pikachu has to use the Light Ball. Plusle's also faster, meaning that you outspeed more Pokemon. You also speed Taofuremons. Like Pikachu at base 90 has to contend with a lot more Pokemon than Plusle at base 95 does. So things like Haunter, where Plusle speed ties with those, sometimes even outspeeding, because you do see a lot of Haunter drop their speed or run modest even. Pikachu is just outsped. Pikachu, I'm trying to remember the mons that it speed ties with that are up here. I'm just bad at remembering speed tiers. Like Murkrow, for example, I believe it just straight up outspeeds Pikachu. I think it's 91. That's another example of Hit Plus is better in that regard. And then we have a slew of water types here, which is very funny. These are also another example. If you could probably move them around order-wise, and it's not that big a deal. Dugong, though, I have as the first one. I think Encore Dugong is just a really good disruptor in the tier. And having Dual Stab is also actually pretty useful because it means Dugong's Ice Beams make a lot more progress versus potential Grass-type switch-ins. Or even, you want to talk about, like, Kecleon, for example, if it comes on a Surf, well, you've got a much stronger Ice Beam. Why did I say Ice Beam? That literally doesn't... it's the Ice Beam into Surf calc that I'm thinking of. You have better follow-up versus Kecleon, I would argue. I mean, obviously, you've got Hidden Power, but a lot of these, offensively, if they have Hidden Power, it's kind of just not doing a ton anyway. So it's just nice to always have Stab, and for the Stab to be kind of easy to cycle versus Kecleon. But more importantly, again, I would say it's the disrupting that it does. So Encore versus some of these mons could be really detrimental to them. I'm particularly thinking about, like, a Wailord. So, like, if I switch into Whale, as it pumps or Ice Beams, I can Encore it into that. And if I got my spikes up, that's going to be really, really good, because then I keep forcing the chip damage over and over and over again. Same with, like, a Torkoal, if I can Encore you into a Fire Blast. Metang, if I Encore you into something like, I don't know, Earthquake. I guess that's okay there, too. Just, again, that move is very useful in this tier, with how spikes are basically always good to assume a set. Pretty cool. Pelipper next. I do like Pelipper checking Hitmonchan. The thing knocking Pelipper down for me a bit more nowadays than it used to is Hidden Power Electric is the coverage move of choice as opposed to Hidden Power Grass. So Pelly just naturally doesn't check as much, so I think it's kind of clearly the third best of the bulky waters. But like we said, still really nice at checking Chan. It still checks Glalie as well, maybe forcing a boom out of it. Could force a boom out of Metang occasionally. And then if you're Rest Talk Pelipper versus like Meteor Mash, Earthquake, Toxic Protect, Metang, I mean, you're just a switch in all the time. So that is pretty fundamentally useful. And much like some of the other physical walls we mentioned earlier, you can basically chalk Pelly up as at least an okay enough switch in to any physical attacker NU has. Octillery, slammed my desk, my bad. Octillery, I really like it as a lead primarily. I think it is the best baton pass recipient in the tier, like it literally runs down teams. But as a lead, Surf, Fire Blast, and Power Electric, T-Wave is just obscenely annoying for a lot of teams to deal with. If you're not leading off something like a Light Screen Glalie, oftentimes Octillery is just making immediate progress no matter what you do about it. It's really, really strong. The coverage is great. T-Wave is just added great utility. If you play ADV NU already and you haven't tried out like Lead Oct, I recommend it. Literally passed my man QZeal, a Lead Octillery team once, because for a team tour we had to fill him into ADV NU because someone else couldn't play. Or I forget what the circumstance was. It might have been that we were just trying to flip the lineup some to see what would work. And yeah, he just super smashed someone with Octillery from the lead slot. It was very funny. And then we got Huntail, rounding out the A's. Huntail's always kind of annoying for me to rate because in any given matchup, it can pop off or be worthless. I think once again, it's another example of a mon that's not that hard to support. You do typically with Huntail, what I've seen be the most successful is what I call overwhelming the water types. It's a strategy. So you pair it up with maybe another offensive water type, usually a Wailord in my experience, but it can be an Octillery. And you could throw like a Flareon on there as well. And you just say, look, I'm going to break your water types in half, snap them like a little twig. And once my Huntail comes out, you will have no counterplay left. The problem is that's where it ends with Huntail. That's all it does. It's a late game sweeper. And one that, in my opinion, does require at least a decent amount of support, just maybe not as much as some of the others will have later on. A-, Raticate, obviously being the fastest mon in the tier is a huge boon to it, so even things like Haunter and Bustle are not safe from its wrath. I think the problem for Raticate is it lacks really convenient coverage for a lot of the top tier defensive mons, so like Metang, Torkoal, and Sableye. where you could see multiple of these mons on the same team. If you're using a rat, it can be really, really, really dire. Because the coverage on it's normally going to be something like return, quick attack, shadow ball, and then you've got a filler slot, so you could be like hidden power ground, but it's usually not that strong. And sometimes you reversal eradicate with sub, and you still lack coverage at that point because reversal doesn't actually hit Metang super effectively. Still doesn't hit Torque super effectively. Does nothing to Sableye. I would say a lot of its usefulness does come from just being faster and everything else. And that alone adds to the threat level, because if you don't have like Mach Punch on Chan, it could be kind of annoying offensively to deal with this mon. So, that's where I stand with it. Pupitar A-. It'll always be one of those mons that on paper could be like S rank just because as a sweeper, you have Stab Edgequake and Dragon Dance. 1 DD, you are faster than the whole tier. The problem is finding that DD. Look at the top tier mons. How many of these mons do you truly safely set up on? The answer is not really any of them. Haunter, you have to worry about grass coverage actually, because people will throw grass coverage on Haunter, specifically on Pupitar weak teams. Or even just, like, here's the funny thing. You can very easily have a Haunter EV to not die to +1 Rock Slide, and then just kill the Pupitar with your grass coverage next. Something like Glalie, well, yeah, that's not the greatest matchup for Glalie, but again, if you're offensive with EQ, I don't remember the coverage, or not the coverage, damage calc, but I do believe it's quite favorable to KO with like marginal chip. And some Glalie do still run Ice Beam. You can go specially offensive Glalie, there's nothing wrong with it. Metang beats you. Flareon, you still have to care about HP Grass. Even though it's not really run like that anymore, it's still a threat. Obviously, Chan annihilates you. Chime runs Reflect a lot. Whale Lamau. Torque could boom on you if it really wanted to deny it, but that's probably going to be one of your better opportunities to set up. Blossom, I'm not trying to set up on a Blossom. I don't know why you're suggesting I do. Sableye, you could technically beat up on pretty successfully. Plusle could have HP Ice or be like sub with Encore, and then you're just lol Lamau. You're not doing anything. Not setting up on any of these waters. I mean, it's dire. But I just feel like the threat level of when you do find the setup on things like, say, again, Torque, Sab, certain Flare, sometimes Haunter, it's pretty rough. Vig, some people think Vigoroth is broken, others think it's unviable. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think it's a pretty good mon. We've seen some people running some very matchup fishy sets lately, where it's like mono attack, and I think those could work. It's just, again, you require very ideal circumstances. So if you go mono like Shadow Ball, for example, well, that's going to be your best bet of just being able to set up and sweep if you get to +6. But again, the odds of getting to +6 for free are not the greatest, and we have enough mons in the tier that when you're not boosted a ton, you can contend with that weak unstabbed Shadow Ball. If you're mono return, I've got a Haunter to sell you. And you're not beating me, ever. You know, Sableye, Haunter, those are the only two ghost types that we really use like that in NU. Technically, Duskull is a Pokemon, but it's not a good one. And so, you know, those get issues with that. So then maybe you run, like, no sub, and you run, Haunt instead to deny Toxic, but then you still are mono attack. Maybe you're bulk up 2 attacks. If you return EQ, you're walled by Haunt. If you return Shadow Ball, you're still kind of checked by a good few Pokemon, and then Toxic also becomes a problem, so it's still rough. Basically, Vig, what I'm saying is Vig will always have some issue, and although you can argue versatility in its favor, I'd argue that versatility doesn't truly manifest ever in, like, increased threat level, because it's not like something like a current Gen Deoxys defense, where the versatility just straight up completely changes counterplay. A lot of the counterplay remains the same. So there's that. Golbat. It's basically the only viable flying type in my opinion for a wall breaker. I don't think when I say the only viable, I'm obviously using that very hyperbolically. These are just noticeably worse. Little Murkrow and Pidgeot. Golbat's got a lot more defensive use to it, where you do check Sunny Beam Blossom, which is pretty cool. You check Hitmonchan as well, just because you're actually resistant to fighting. Those other two are not. And the dual stab from Golbat is a lot more valuable than Pidgeot's is. And of course, Murkrow doesn't have dual stab in this gen because Dark is special. It's really all I have to say. Also, it's kind of cool with Golbat that non-steel type switch-ins have to fear Sludge Bomb Poison. That actually just aids the wall breaking. So if you're dealing with things like, say, Torkoal or Sableye, or even maybe like a Pelipper that's trying to switch into Sludge Bomb, is not as safe. Pikachu next. Incredible wall breaker. It's, in terms, you could argue it's the best wall breaker in the tier from just the damage perspective. I mean, factually, it probably is. The issue Pikachu deals with is bulk. It will fall to any priority move practically, and as a result, it mandates very, very good support. So typically you're going to see like sub-pass Flareon on every Pikachu team. You'll see a lot of Mawile as well as a partner. That's basically just, you have to try and maximize this thing's ability to get on the field. When it's on the field, it's great. Problem is, all it does is break. So things like Plusle are still typically more valuable for the team slot, because Plusle, at the very least, has more utility and is still kind of annoying to switch around since grass types aren't exactly at a high point right now in NU. So Plusle's Thunderbolt's usually pretty free to just keep throwing off, and you're not really contested like that. And then last in my A- is I got Sudowoodo. Now, you may wonder, why is Sudowoodo an A-, Robbie? What does it fucking do? I think Flareon is very scary. So I have Sudowoodo in my A-. I think at the end of the day, lead Pseudo is also like a generally okay mon. The water types all dunk on it, but Torkoal's a pretty common lead, you beat that. Glalie of course, a common lead, you beat that. I think that's about all you could ask for. It's got good enough coverage. I mean, you got Edgequake available to you. You can explode. You can even do some funny Focus Punch stuff. It's not necessarily good, but I mean, it's an option. Checks Flare, checks Torque, checks Golbat, checks the other birds, checks normal types. It's fine. It's a fine mon. You may wonder I'm saying fine about an A- mon. Happens. And then we get to B+. Now remember, this is alphabetical. So you may see like a Seadra and be like, oh my god, why is it way back here? It's alphabetical, calm down. Arbok. Arbok has gotten a lot more usage lately. And by a lot more, it's not really a lot of usage, just enough to note it. Intimidate Arbok is just kind of nice. It gives you a lot more leeway versus things like Hitmonchan to come in and try and do stuff. Golbat as well, you could technically bring this in on. It's not too bad. As a breaker, it has really good coverage too, with like Sludge Bomb, Hidden Power Ghost, Earthquake. I saw Miss C, they were using a subset, and it was pretty good. Got in, set up sub on 4 switches, and found damage. Wasn't really a whole lot else you could ask for. Cacturn! Again, Cacturn and Roselia, we talked about both of them earlier, so I'm not going to really spend much time at all on them. The whole point is basically you offer a portion of the stuff Glalie does defensively, while also having some tools it doesn't have access to. In Cacturn's case, it's stronger than Glalie by a noticeable margin, and you've got D-Bond and potential sleep. So that's enough to keep it from going like all the way down to like C rank, where you're just saying like, oh yeah, this is super niche, no reason to use. Kecleon B+. I don't like Kecleon personally because I can't build good teams with it, but special defense, the special bulk on this man is kind of, oh my god. It basically checks any special attacker, just with vibes. Problem, of course, color change can both be good and bad. Some mons just beat you harder because of color change. So something like a Pikachu, don't you dare switch into that thing Surf. It will not help. Blossom, okay, switch into my Solar Beam. I will hit Power Fire you the next turn and you will vanish. It won't vanish, but it'll take a lot. So, again, there's some awkward mons that you fight, but then you've got things like Plusle and Haunter, where, I mean, yeah, you could just come in and wall them. So, good mon, good potential with it. Mawile B+. Unlike Metang, it's a lot better physical bulk-wise, so you check things like the Flyers and normal types even more effectively, because you've got Intimidate as that buffer, same thing as like Arbok. And in Baton Pass is at least a marginally useful niche to have over Metang's overall better toolkit. Relicanth, kind of the same thing as Mawile, where compared to the other bulky water types, it's just better physically defensive-wise because of your secondary typing. On the flip side, you then become basically useless as a check to any special attacker because you resist nothing that they have. So there's that. I mean, Reli, again, a lot of it's just down to stats. Relicanth actually has pretty good stats for the standards of this tier. Seadra, B+, good lead. Very nice lead. Sub-Toxic is good. You can even just do like sub-3 attacks with the Pataya Berry. Maximize the coverage. Pretty solid. The speed tier, I think you're base 90 on this mon as well. I can literally bring this up anytime. 85, so not as good as I was thinking, but you're still at 295 if you go timid. Let me show the timid. There you go. That's going to give you a jump up on a lot of other leads. So you talk about leads in NU. Flaley's one of them. Metang, Chan, Flare could be led with, although I'm not a huge fan. Whale, Octillery, like all these are mons that you just outspeed anyway. So it's pretty helpful. And in Rose in B+, not at all near her peak. She used to be damn near the de facto best mon in the tier. But his Def Roselia, at least having a positive Chan matchup, it's enough. Now we get to B. And something also worth pointing out, if you notice the ranks consistently keep getting bigger, it's because in a tier like this, it's very top heavy. So the top ranks are always a lot smaller, and you see few mons in them, but it's because these mons are all the best in the tier, so there's not a ton of deviating you need to do beyond past like A- necessarily. And a lot of the mons you'll see down B+ and below are mons that you kind of just use when you want to. Crawdon is an example of that, where I think I've tried out some specially offensive sets with Crawdon because you then get to make use of both your stabs. Physical sets obviously can't, so you have to run SD with just like weird coverage. It's kind of like neither option's amazing. SD Crawdon, there was one guy who liked using it, not a couple, god, it would have been like several years ago. They liked SD Crawdon. It was like, okay, you had like Ancient Power, in Power Ground, and like Double Edge or something as your coverage. And it's good coverage, it's just there's no stab to be seen in anywhere in sight. Nope, none. But it's basically just, it's a fine enough wall breaker. It's just, you're still like the same speed tier as the other water type breakers at the cost of having somehow worse defensive utility because you're just frailer. So it's okay. Kingler, I think the Endure stuff with Flail is pretty cool. I've used it in a couple tournament battles, had some success here and there. Coverage on Kingler, though, is always the worst thing to figure out because you have to have SD, you have to have Endure, you have to have Flail, so you have one last coverage option, and you pretty much always want Hidden Power Ghost, but then you're just missing out on coverage versus some things like Metang then. But you want the coverage for like Haunter. You still don't hit Sableye super effectively. Torque, I think, can technically live a hit as well at +2, but I'd have to calc to confirm. It just, there's some obvious issues. It also, again, special bulk. It's revenge killed by basically every special attacker of the tier. And inconveniently for Kingler, it's slower than them. So you better get that Salic Berry. Again, thankfully you have Endure. What I'd say is the worrying thing is a lot of special attackers are hitting you with T-bolts, so if you get paralyzed, it's very sad. Macargo, talked about it earlier. Macargo's just kind of nice because at the end of the day, it's the best Flareon check in the tier. Checking the other physical attackers is tough because a lot of them just have coverage for you, so like, you know, Earthquake, literally stab moves. In Power, Earthquake, in Power, Earthquake. So it kind of puts a ceiling on it beyond checking Flare and even Torque. But at least that's enough in my view to put it above the true dredges of the tier. Minun is basically just worse Plusle, but it's got some bulk to it. And there's technically an argument you can make that Minun is roughly equal to Plusle if you really want to go that route. I'm not going to make it. It comes down to math that I'm too lazy to do. I took my Calc 2 in college. That was enough. I took my theoretical math. Graph theory was pretty fun. Number theory was pretty fun. That's not what I'm about with this Minun calcing stuff, but the bulk, I believe, does... I remember being shown by Pichu Flash. There are some bulk calcs that Minun gets that are actually like worth chasing, but I'd have to go reference them, and I don't remember them off the dome. Then we got Murkrow and Pidgeot. They're worse than Golbat, but functionally they're still okay breakers. Pidgeot has some like bulk to it that can kind of be cool. That's about it though. Swalot has some okay coverage. It's a Chan check at the end of the day. It's a Blossom check at the end of the day. It just, again, why am I using it over the other options is pretty much the thing. Tangela, you could argue it's a little overranked, though compared to Blossom, having the physical bulk can sometimes be cool. Kinda just a vibes thing here, I'm gonna be honest. Togedex got pretty good special bulk. Despite Haunter having T-Bolt, you could actually tank a T-Bolt. decently well and not toxic. Hit it in return with like a T-Wave or just an attack. Check Flareon sometimes. Like, you basically just tank one hit and then retaliate with status. You check Blossom well. You check the water type pretty okay. Not amazingly, but okay enough. Whiscash is kind of a cool wall breaker and a pretty good Pupitar check as well. It also sometimes will check things like Pikachu and Plusle, because they don't really run Hidden Power Grass, so that's helpful. Wigglytuff's just a generic special wall, and it has better coverage than Kecleon, but that's basically where it ends. Otherwise, Kecleon's just superior. C rank, I'm gonna give you like 3 words for each of these. Abra. Calm Mind Salicberry. Delcatty. Baton Passer. Diglett. Traps Fire types. Dragonair. Okay Stall Pokemon. Graveler. Mediocre Wall Breaker. Coughing. It checks Hitmonchan. Leedian. Baton Passer. Lickitung. Stall Wish User. Magby. Lead. Piloswine. Mediocre Wall Breaker. Ponyta. Sleeper Lead. Maybe? Hold on, let me confirm this. Let me not look too stupid. Yeah, there it is. Sleeper Lead, yeah! Shelgon. Dragon Dance? Right, let's put it here. DD? Yeah, Dragon Dance Sweeper. Ah, that's not what I meant to go to. Tropius. Bad Swords Dancer. Venomoth. Baton Pass Lead. And then Wartortle. Rapid Spin. And then these mons are just down here because they were in the tier maker, and I felt like still putting them in their own tier. These are all mons that have been like okay at points in NU, but I don't really think have much reason to be used. Like Grovyle kind of just does some it does like Endure Pataya Berry, where you're supposed to get into Overgrow and pray that Leaf Blade can do some stuff. Lairon's kind of just like a Graveler wall breaker, but it has worse stabs. Noctowl's just worse than all the other normal types. Poliwhirl's just, it's Salicberry Belly Drum, but it's not very consistent. Volbeat's Tail Glow Baton Pass, but do remember in this generation, Tail Glow was only +2. And it's, I mean, you never really see it used. Yanma is a reversal sweeper with speed boost. I couldn't tell you the last time I saw Yanma, though, actually do anything of note. So yeah, that's the tier. That's my little personal VR. Like I said, I posted it in our little discussion thread, so I hope y'all enjoyed. Maybe I'll post this video as well. Or again, this is going up in like weeks, so there's that. But always like getting my thoughts out there for y'all. Hope this also inspires some of y'all. If you haven't played this tier before, to get into it, we do have sample teams posted somewhere. Just go to the NU sub forum. There's an NU Old Gens forum within it. Look at some samples trying to get into the tier. I'm sure you can find people that want to play it, but thanks for watching, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.